way too much energy. Grand!
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mint Bean Hiring Hacks. I just hit live on YouTube and it's playing on this screen. I stopped that. Monarch shaved this morning for the hack, which is really weird for me because I haven't seen him clean shaven in months. If you guys have been around Mint Bean, he had like a full beard going on a few months ago, and then he decided to go back. It was like in increments almost. Like you didn't want to
Why are we talking about my facial hair? Nobody wants to hear about my facial hair. I don't have much facial hair.
I'm finding it really weird. You just like turn the clock on yourself. Like I feel a little bit older.
I'm only 21, barely legal. Okay, guys, welcome to the hackathon. I am so excited to have you all here. And special shout out to everybody who came to the last hackathon. Who came to the last hackathon? Show of hands. I want to see who came to the last hackathon. Yeah. Okay, I see a few familiar faces and a few hands from unfamiliar faces because there were like 1,000 people at the last hackathon. I lost count. I lost track. Oh my God, there's so many people. Now we take screenshots. That is awesome.
No,
everybody has their cameras on. I love it.
Thank you for turning your cameras on, guys. It's really nice to see everyone's face and not just be staring into
Dorian. I'm squishing Dorian's face right now. Hey Dorian. Chris. Yeah, Chris is squishing it too. Cool. This is my index here at Hackathon, Michael Farmer. I have a special announcement for people, especially for the people who are coming back for the hackathon from last time. All of your scores are now on hire.mintbean.io.
Finally.
You can go there.
Drum roll. I have been getting direct messages from so many people, and I'm just like, I can't share this with anyone because it's not ready for the world. But we've rated the submissions and all that was done, but we were building a platform. We were building a platform for employers to make sure that their experience when they're viewing your candidate profiles is optimal. So we've got a lot of interesting. Do you want to share it? Do you want to share your screen?
I'm going to share a link. I think everybody can take a look. I'm going to share it in announcements, and I'm just going to share the link. Here we go. hire.mintbean.io. That's hire.mintbean.io. And I have dropped that inside the announcements channel. This is the employer-facing side. We've dressed it up to make it really appealing to employers so that when they get there, they're primed and ready to start hiring you all. Your names are on there for free so that anybody can take a look at your names and call you directly. They don't have to go through us. They don't have to do anything. That makes our lives really easy because we're going to be putting in so many features. We're going to be putting in filtration. We're going to be putting in sort. We're going to be putting in ways to find you all based on what's relevant to the employer, and it's totally free for them and for you. So you're already on there. It is first release just went out this morning at I think 7 o'clock. If there's anything weird, I want feedback. So just send it to me. Put it in general. Put it anywhere on Discord. Tell me what you hate about it. Tell me what you love about it. Hey Matt, and I am going to completely be working on that pretty much all week. I should clarify, I was saying hi to Matt Dillon, who missed, with all of his experience from the casino industry, he missed the game last week. He missed the card game hackathon last week. How do you do that, Matt? But
it's anywho, especially built for him.
Right? It was like specially built for, I built that hackathon challenge for you, man.
There was a picture of you, Matt, on Monarch's desk as he was thinking of the challenge. Just
yes.
Just so but guys, we're super excited about this platform. I want to talk about this platform.
Oh my God, you want to talk about the platform?
Can we please take a minute to just talk about how we are there's this, oh my God, guys, we've been working with this community for 18 months. We hear so much about how many things are broken on the candidate side. We hear so many things from the employer side. We've been taking and absorbing all this information for a very long time. And there's a lot that needs to be fixed. This is one step forward. But there's a lot that we want to make a difference in when it comes to the candidate experience as well as the employer experience. It's very hard to identify the strength of a junior developer when you're coming out of, whether you're coming out of a boot camp program, whether you're teaching yourself, or whether you're coming out of more traditional outlets like universities and colleges. It's really hard to quantify as an employer what your strength is. The only thing that sort of sets you apart is when you look at someone's GitHub calendar and you see how active they are and you start kind of interacting with their portfolio. But it's still like you don't know like the strength of the developer until you get to talk to them, and until your engineering team is sort of like interacting with them either based on their code base or on, you know, the developer's code base. So it's, the hiring process is really, really difficult. And with the hiring hackathons, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show our employers, hey, hackathons are a really great indicator of talent and the strength of a developer. And we're also kind of making our notes. If you kind of take a look at it, some of you scored in a certain percentile. So it sort of like puts people in categories where employers are able to kind of do that. I'm going into a long spiel. I apologize. We're here for the hiring.
I tuned out. I tuned out hardcore, not even gonna lie. But yeah,
that's so mean. I'm like genuinely interested about this, okay?
Hey, so am I. But TLDR though, you guys aren't being put in front of hiring managers because every single company out there is asking those hiring managers for money to connect them to you. So we're flipping the script. We're making it so that you can connect to those hiring managers for free based on your skills, and they can connect with you for free and hire you folks. We're going to be adding way more stuff on that platform over time. I am looking for feedback on that, but yeah, like it's just a crazy system, isn't it? Like they think that there is a tech talent shortage, but they don't want to hire junior developers. We have 500 people over here who are junior developers. According to the stats, you guys are going to take up to a year to get hired. Some people take 3 years. There are people in this community who've been looking for work for 3 years and they haven't been hired. I know people who got hired at the 2-year mark, and on average, it takes 6 months for a junior developer to get hired. And then they complain about a tech talent shortage, which is crazy. There was an article that came out just a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that said that we have negative unemployment in tech, whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but we have negative unemployment in tech. What the heck are we doing to help junior developers grow their skills so that they can go and become senior developers and fix that tech talent shortage on the higher end of the spectrum? Like, we're not going to have senior developers in 10 years if we don't invest in you folks. So that's what we're trying to do at Mintbean. So I can keep going on about it. Navi, do you have your permission to move on to the hackathon?
Yes. Let's move on. Let's talk about today's hack.
All right. So I think all of you all have already seen the hiring hackathon for today. If you go back to that same page, and I will share my screen and I'll show you what I mean. If you go back, are you guys seeing my Discord, or are you guys seeing my browser? You guys are seeing my browser? Okay, perfect. So if you guys go right here, and if you go to the left of the page, you have all these fancy buttons that we coded up, and there's one called resources. So you're going to click on resources, and you're going to see the instructions for today's hiring hackathon. Today's hiring hackathon is, we're going to be building a 2D video game. And I'm wearing my Contra shirt right here for all you old nerds. There's a new Contra video game that came out. I don't know what to think about the new one, but I'm an old gamer. I used to play Contra in the 90s when I was like a kid. And it was just such an amazing game. And you will have the opportunity to build Contra if you would like to. You also have the opportunity to build Tetris if that's what you want to build. You have the opportunity to build Super Mario or Civilization. I wouldn't recommend Civilization if you would like to. So this hackathon is all about 2D games. No 3D games allowed. Sorry, folks, not really super feasible in a JavaScript web environment. We're trying to get people hired for their web development skills. So this is a 2D hackathon, a 2D game hackathon. Today, we're going to have only full stack and front end applications. So no back end only, folks. If you're a back end only developer, I suggest that either you flex your muscle and learn front end development, or pair up with somebody who's a front end developer so that you can build a full stack app. You can fill in on the back end, you can fill in on the front end. So what does this mean? You guys can take a look. Basically, you're building a video game for a whole week. You now have an excuse to just have fun for a whole week. And at the end of it, I'm going to grade it. We're going to grade all of the projects that come in, and we're going to put them up on the platform so that hiring managers can get in touch with you. I don't know if it needs any more explanation. I'm pretty happy with that explanation for the hackathon. But one thing that you guys should know is that there's the hiring hackathon guide. The way you get to this guide is you just go up and you click on About, and you go to the bottom of the About page, and you click on the Hiring Hackathon Guide. And a direct link will be placed by Navi inside Discord in the event announcement so that you can have that. But this is basically the complete guide on how this all works. And the most important part is timelines, themes, submissions, all of that. The most important part about this is the rubric. And the rubric is where if this is your first time, the rubric is where you know what to build and how to build it. Yes, there is a very open-ended challenge for you today, but there's actually a very closed, very specific set of grading criteria that are going to be used to grade your projects. So if you are going to submit the project, you're going to get a completion certificate for sure on the platform. I'm hoping that by next week, we can have a shareable certificate so you can put it on your LinkedIns and you can put it on your resumes. But either way, you're going to get a certificate. As long as you submit your application, you're going to get a certificate of completion, which is very valuable. That ensures that you get placed in front of hiring managers with that certificate. And if you want examples, you can go to hire.mintbean.io, which is hire.mintbean.io right here. And you can look up everybody over here. I'm just going to go and click on, say, Starterbrick. Now, Starterbrick has the certificate of completion. That puts him, according to our stats in our system, that puts him in the top 16% of devs. He also has a Mint Bean Star Award. And a Mint Bean Star Award is something that only gets awarded to the top 5% of devs. And we're making that window even narrower every hackathon. We're going to make it even harder to get. The Mint Bean Star Award is awarded to projects that are, and individuals that are just extremely good at what they do so that they get highlighted in front of hiring managers immediately. That's basically how we work. Let's talk about the rubric just a little bit. I'm not going to bore you with too many details because I want to move on to the panel in about 12 minutes. But, and I also want to take questions before we go there. But how this all works is we have a 12-point system. That 12-point system, as long as you get 8 points out of 12, you win, like you get a star. It's not very difficult to get a star, but it does require attention to detail, and you do need to just pay attention to the rubric. If you want that star and you want to get highlighted and filtered all the way to the top, you really want to pay attention to the rubric. There are 6 criteria. So there's user experience, there's functionality, reliability, landing page, and Readme and storytelling. Sorry, seven criteria. The user experience and UX UI is pretty self-explanatory. Developer experience does not apply because that's for only backend projects. Functionality, this is whether the app works as advertised. So if you build a 3D game, you're going to get a 0 in functionality. But if you build a 2D game and you have super creative features, then you get a full 2 points on that scale. Reliability, is, are there any bugs? That's basically what reliability is. Landing page. This is interesting. This is an explainer page. There are examples lower in the hiring hackathon guide I'll get to, but a landing page is like, this is an explainer for what your product really is. You want to put your best foot forward in front of hiring managers, you have to build a landing page. Like, there's no two ways about it. Otherwise, hiring managers don't really know what to do with your game because there's no context, there's no storytelling. So the landing page gives you all of that, and that's a requirement for the hiring hackathon. If you don't do a landing page, you get 0 points. You do that often enough on the rubric, you can, but you do that often enough on the rubric and you don't get a star. Then you have the Readme. So the Readme, as long as the Readme is really well written and has a list of all the developers, and it has screenshots of the application, and it has instructions on how to get started, you'll get a full 2 points on the Readme. If you don't have a Readme, or if you don't have a link to your deployed site, or you don't have basic development and deployment instructions, you don't get any points. And the last one, we have a modification over here from last time. Storytelling and personal branding is now an individual score. So this is the only thing that doesn't get scored on a group basis if you're in a group. This is an individual score, and you'll be scored on this personally. Every single person has to submit their project themselves. So if you have 3 people, then we're expecting 3 submissions on the form. If you only have 1 person, then of course we'll only expect the 1 submission from you. But the storytelling and personal branding, this is basically, how do you explain who you are professionally to hiring managers, what you built and how you built it, all of the challenges, trials and tribulations, and the fun you had in the hackathon, how exciting it was. All of that goes towards really highlighting you to hiring managers, getting attention for you. And if you do a really high effort post, like we had some people who did a video walkthrough of their applications on LinkedIn, they got 2 points. Some people did an audio presentation. Some people did, I think the most interesting one that I gave 2 points to was actually a full video explanation of the application. It was really awesome. And oh yeah, somebody also wrote a blog article, like a full Hashnote blog article. They got 2 points, like absolutely. Bunches of helpful tips over here. Honestly, guys, it's really easy to get carried away in the hackathon and try and build something that's just massive. I would say start small, build something that's really basic, and then evolve it. Try and build your first version of your game in 2 or 3 days, something really, really simple, doesn't have all the bells and whistles, maybe doesn't even have a win condition or lose condition, doesn't have an end state, it's just like a guy walking around. Get that done first, and then evolve it over time. Don't try and build something massive. That's the best way to just get a tire blown out. Don't do that to yourself. Build it slowly. You're not an assembly line putting code together. You're evolving something. It's almost like Farmville. It's like you're growing something. You're not really building something. That's how I like to put it. So when you're growing something, you start with just a really tiny thing, and then you over time just evolve it. Over time, you just like take care of it, nurture it, and you add stuff to it that makes it grow. Don't think about it. That's what agile is. Don't think about it in a waterfall way, where in 7 days you have an end product and we're going to get to the end product. That's my helpful advice to you. I think that's the biggest advice that I can give you. The second biggest advice that I can give you is manage your motivation. So it's a hackathon. It is meant to be a fun but intense experience. And if you're going to be, if you want to have fun and you want this experience to be something that you grow from, that you get opportunities from, you have to manage your motivation. You can't really go out there and expect to be Superman. Like I'm seeing a meme of the Hulk that's super appropriate on random. Don't be the Hulk. Don't go out there and Hulk smash. Be really, really mindful of your personal circumstances, of your mental health and work-life balance. Everybody's different. I can go 48 hours coding and working, and I don't care. A lot of people can go like, weeks and weeks without a vacation or a break. I'm not like that. But some people, they need to break every 4 hours or 8 hours. If you're that person, don't get carried away by, oh, it's a hackathon. I need to burn myself out. Don't do that. Take it slow, and have fun with it. I think if you have fun with it, you're probably going to end up being getting a star just because you had fun with it. You did stuff that really entertained you, and then that kept your motivation going and helped you cross the finish line and got you through the hurdles and the deployment issues. Oh, deployment issues. Please deploy early, please. If you're going to use Vercel or Netlify or Heroku, deploy super early. Deploy. First thing you should do is just go and deploy it. And once it's deployed, and when you're pushing up to main, it's just going to auto update your app. You don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about it, and it's just something that's just really good for everyone. Just deploy early. You're going to thank me later if you deploy early. We have more examples over here of how to build landing pages. I just want to mention that before going on to the next section. Here's what a very simple landing page from very long ago looks like. And it's a really good example. They have the engineers who built it at the very bottom. They have their GitHubs and LinkedIns. They have screenshots. They have GIFs, which is really cool. And it's a full explanation of what the app is. It's a Kanban app, by the way. Here's another one. This is Trello. This is also a Kanban app from the same hackathon from, I think, a year ago. And they did a phenomenal job building the landing page and the application. Like, it's really neat, really spiffy. And you can see that just by having a landing page, it just becomes way more impressive rather than just having a Kanban. And here's Can React. Here's another Kanban. And this one is also, it lists the technologies that they use, the bootcamp they went to. It lists the people who built it. And then you can click on try it for free. And then you have the Kanban itself that you can then get to immediately from the application. So all of these, you can just go immediately to the application and you can start playing with it. Yeah. If you have any questions, drop them in chat. Navi, I think you might be maybe taking a look at those questions and curating them for me.
There seems to be more LinkedIn connections than questions. So we haven't had questions yet, but I feel like we might have skipped over the actual challenge. Maybe that's why.
Gotcha.
There are a lot of resources. I think another thing that I wanted to touch up on was the open office hours. I haven't had the time to fully put that on the meets page, but there are tons and tons of open office hours. One starts today at 7 p.m. We have 3 amazing developers, Claire, Julio, and Erica, at 7 today. And then we have Claire and Erica at 7 tomorrow. I can quickly go over the schedule. Where is my file?
So if you have any problems with your code, if you want to bounce ideas, if you want to get some help in deployment or debugging, then these are all members from the community. They very generously put up their time to help you folks. And I suggest you, if you get stuck, take advantage of it. It's just really amazing to just be able to log into a call. There's no registration process. Just come as you are. Just log into the call and you're good. You don't have to sign up or anything. And usually there's a lot of space. Usually there's a lot of time that you get from code mentors. So you can just log on and ask questions over there. I think we have 2.
There's a couple of questions that are coming in. So Josephine asked melon.js allowed.
Melon.js, let's see. Melon.js probably, but let's see.
Jay's asking, do we have to build a game or could it be anything?
I'll get to that in a second. Is Melon.js downloadable from NPM? I will get back to you about Melon.js. I don't know. I'm getting a good feeling from it, but I want to be sure that it doesn't cross over into game engine territory. Like, it is a game engine, but it doesn't cross over into Unity and Godot and Unreal territory. So I'll get back to you on that. What's the next question?
Do we have to build a game or could it be anything?
You have to build a game. So if you build a Kanban board, it better be super entertaining, or you're not going to get 2 points for functionality and you're going to lose points everywhere.
Is it a
Michael Palmer just said NPM install Tempest.
is it a one-player game?
It can be a one-player game. It can be a multiplayer game. It can be whatever you want. It can be a hot seat game. Like I used to love slime volleyball. I used to play it in high school all the time. And A and D and W were player one, and left, right, up were player two. So it can be anything. Make it easy for us to grade. Like if you do multiplayer on WebSockets, Steph asked, yes, WebSockets you can use. Grant asked Phaser, yes, you can use Phaser. Will there be any point reduction for not responsive? No, there won't be any point reduction for that. Amanda asked, can we use Python? That's interesting. You can use it on the back end, and if you get like a Python on the front end, it compiles down to JavaScript. I don't see why not. So yes, you can absolutely use Python. Elizabeth asked, can you build card games? Yes, you can absolutely build card games. If I see that you've basically just taken the card game from last time and you've copy pasted it, I've seen each and every one myself, then, like I can't accept that because that's just cheating. But if you build a card game from scratch, yeah, for sure, go for it. If you want to have another whack at it, do it. Because I didn't think about it, but it is a 2D game. So yeah, sure. Can we use Kaboom or Pygame? I don't know. What is Pygame?
Great
No,
question.
you can't use Pygame. You can't use Pygame because this looks more like a full-on game engine, and it's supposed to be something that actually, you know what? I'll take a look at the docs and let me take a look at it and let me figure it out. It looks like it's really similar to Phaser, and I'm allowing Phaser. And this Python is technically a web dev language. You know what? I'll allow it. Yeah, you can absolutely do Pygame. Go for it. You can do Pygame because we're allowing Phaser. Biprajit asks, Physics.js? Yes, you can use physics. Kaboom.js? Probably. There are more questions than I can answer, which is great. I'm loving the questions. But if you haven't gotten your questions answered, tag me to an @monarch and
Inside
drop
the
it.
Discord server.
Drop it inside the Discord server, which is where we're all talking. I also got a few DMs. I'm sorry, but I lost them. I looked over and it was like 99 plus messages. I don't know where your message is. I'm sorry. If I haven't answered a DM, it's not because I was ignoring you. It's because I didn't see it. So send me a DM in Discord and I can answer.
What we'll also do is we'll take a look at all the questions and we'll make sure that all that stuff is answered post event as well, so that if anybody asked a question, we'll make sure that it's answered.
Yep. Jennifer Ignacio, maybe we can have a list of allowed tech based on all the game frameworks that are out there. Jennifer, that would be really helpful. And what I can do is I can accept that as an open source contribution to put on the Mint Bean Hackathon's repo. If you want to make a GitHub repo and contribute to Mint Bean Hackathons, I would love to make that an official repo. Give it an MIT license and start that tech. And I can do like yay and nay on all the tech that's allowed, not allowed. Because we do game hackathons all the time. I think maybe half, like 30% to half of our hackathons are game hackathons, because games are just extremely, extremely good ways to have fun, build like coding skills. And they also build algorithm skills, which is really neat. So we do game hackathons all the time. So yeah, I would love that. Jennifer, that would be awesome. So Dorian asked, what does MIT do? MIT basically says, you can't sue me if I use your code. I can't sue you if you use my code. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't like look into, I can't like, talk about the legal structures, but the way I understand it from a legal point of view, it's like a linked list of permissions that just goes down forever. It's crazy stuff. The stuff we do with language. Safe to say trivia / quiz games are okay. Yeah, trivia and quiz games are okay. And thank you, Jonathan, for dropping the MIT license and explaining, and Chris, thank you for explaining things in simpler ways than I did. Cool. And I think I'm done here. We need to move on to the panel. Oh, the panel is extremely useful. It's going to be very valuable. It's going to be about early dev careers. We've assembled a few different panelists, and there are many different points of view. Navi's going to talk about it. If you're curious about careers, which I think many of you are, it's actually probably the best way. Like contra. I'm also a very distractible man. The panel is actually probably the best way to get insights, ask questions, and know what's coming up next. After you graduate, or you come to a certain level of being self-taught, or you just start looking for a job, things start getting more muddy because now you're stepping outside the predictable world of code, and you're stepping into the outside world, and stuff isn't documented, and people don't want to talk to you, and it's not fun. And we have people who worked at Minteen. We have people who are still looking for a job. We have me. I'm going to be in the panel. I'm going to be kind of semi-moderating with Navi. We have people who recently got jobs, and we're just going to be talking about that right now. You don't have to hop off of the Zoom call. We'll be talking about that in the Zoom call. So I suggest you'll hang out, and you can ask questions in the Zoom chat or in the Discord chat. Navi, you'll be, I believe, taking a look at the chat and just collecting those questions.
Yes,
because we're getting a lot of questions.
I know there's so many good questions. I want to kind of like bring the Q&A session back post the panel, but I want to respect the panelists' time because a lot of them are taking time off of their paid jobs. So I want to make sure that we're being respectful to their employers. So without further ado, I am going to start adding our panelists to the little screen box over here. Hey, Claire.
I'll start from the bottom. Hey, Claire.
Yo, good to be back.
How you doing?
Erica, you have to turn your camera on in order for me to add you.
Okay, that's all.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Do we have everyone on stage?
Hello,
There
hello.
we go.
Hello.
Six
Yay.
Greg's all here.
Awesome. I'm so excited for this panel. If anyone was here for the first hiring hackathon that we did, wasn't our first, it was like our 90th, but hey, who's counting? Our first hiring hackathon that we did in July, we brought in experts from the field, from the employer side, and it was a really interesting conversation. And Monarch and I were thinking of, how do we, what can we do for this hackathon that's a little bit different, and how do we make sure that we're being inclusive on the conversation and the challenges of breaking into tech? So we wanted to bring developers that are in the same shoes as you guys. I mean, do you guys wear a singular shoe? I don't know. We're all at home. We could be doing all sorts of weird things.
The big shoe fits all of us.
But I'm super excited to bring this panel together. All of them are only a few steps ahead of where you guys find yourselves. And we're going to be going around the circle and introducing everybody. So I'm just I guess I'm going to go down the way that I see this is Julio, Erica, Danny, and then Claire, and then I'll come to Monarch last. So Julio, for those of you not familiar with Julio, he's been in the Mint Bean community for, it feels like a very long time, but I think 6 months.
6 months, about 6 months, yeah.
About 6 months. And he's been an integral part of the community, really. He started off attending 3 hackathons like yourself, and did 3 back-to-back hackathons until he finally, we used to announce winners before we started doing the hiring hackathons, until he won one. And I believe the one that you won was also had to deal with Phaser. So
yeah, actually a lot of similarities. Even I think Monarch was wearing that same shirt, which inspired me, my game with the run and gun, which is the one that won. So Yeah,
Dude, I've been
totally.
telling him he needs to go shopping. I was like, literally, you're
It's
on
a cool
leash
shirt,
over
right? No
here.
problem.
I bought shirts and they were too big for me. So that's the peril of internet shopping.
Wait, how does one person
Yeah.
lose weight when they're just sitting down all day? Like, how does that even happen? It's frustrating.
Doesn't for me.
I'm sorry, just ranting. But yeah, no, I'm super excited for Julio to be here. Julio has, he comes from he was a chef in a previous life. He has a ton of design background. He has experience in management and recently got picked up as on a game project.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Game development. It fit me pretty well. It seems to be going well right now. It's a startup idea, so we'll see how long it lasts. But so far, the ride's pretty cool.
yeah, that's awesome. And was it something that happened because of the hackathon that you participated in?
Well, no, actually, I started with them before the hackathon, and I wasn't sure about. I'm not sure about this project in general, but I like it. But at the same time, like in my head, I'm always trying to like prepare for the worst kind of thing. So I still wanted to be part of your last hackathon, the hiring hack. So like I snuck away hours, like every day here and there, and I was just like, all right, let me at least try to build something and put it out there. And I was able to make something. It wasn't what I was intending to make, but I made it. I put it out there, and even that, like, I didn't reach the goal I had set for myself, but that got me a lot of attention, like just from the hackathon itself, and then other people, seeing my posts on LinkedIn about my game, and like, it really does make a huge difference the way that you post something. Like when Monarch taught me about metatag.io, that shows you how your link shows up on posts, and like being able to add that extra information and put a little GIF in there, like it makes a post pop, and all of a sudden and like I've had like side by side where one that doesn't have that GIF and that extra information and the other one that does. And like the other one, it's like, they don't even see it. Like nobody looked at it. But yeah.
That's
I
interesting.
also diverge on tangents, so.
No, that's completely acceptable. What I really admire you for, Julio, is what you've been able to create with the Learn a Bit committee, and just all the people that you've been able to help inside the community, all the developers that kind of were in similar situations where they kind of felt stuck. And you've really made an impact with so many people. And I've seen a lot of folks in the Learn a Bit club get hired. So, it's thanks to, everybody inside the Learn a Bit committee, including you, who put a lot of effort and your own time into that initiative.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we definitely liked getting that out of it too, because we all kind of connected on that similar feeling. Even the Learn a Bit community, as like a group, we linked up because we all kind of realized, we're like, hey, we're all feeling like the same. Like a lot of the times you don't want to talk about when you feel crappy. You don't want to talk about how like you feel down, and like the things that you think about, like, man, maybe I'm not good enough. Like he's talking about code, like, yeah, it's great. And then like the Zoom call ends and you're like crying about code, like it happens, but you realizing and breaking down that border is like, yeah, that person's doing the same thing as soon as we end the call. So let's get together, and like, you're not gonna just pick everything up, but that like interactivity, it makes you feel better about how you feel, which also helps you stop feeling that way. Yeah. So it kind of like, reciprocates itself.
Absolutely. All right. I'd love to continue this conversation, but I really want to introduce everybody else. Erica, up next. What can I say about Erica? I've only known Erica for 30 days, maybe longer, 45?
I don't know, but I talked enough for 6 months. So
I'm sorry?
I always talk too much. So it's probably enough for 6 months.
No, not the case at all. But yeah, in this really short frame of time, I've become very, very close with Erica. She's an amazing, amazing human being. She's a self-taught developer. She hails from Brazil and is currently residing in the UK. And she's also a PhD candidate. I have mentioned on my LinkedIn post that there's very few developers I've come across that can absorb information as fast as you can. And the other person that I've given that compliment to, strangely, was also someone who had a PhD. So I think there's a link here. I think the fact that, the PhD stream requires a lot of just researching and reading and just living in documentation land. I think it gives you an edge. And it sort of speaks for how fast you've been able to accelerate in this field. You only started learning how to code, I think, late last year, if I'm not mistaken. And, she's already employed, and you also got a promotion within the first 2 weeks of being inside the company. So kudos to you, Erica. Super excited to have you on the panel today.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So as Navi said, I'm self-taught, and a lot of people in the community, when they find it out, are sending like messages because they're really struggling to reach, really struggling like with a lack of structure and how to go from there. So if you need, like, I'm pretty active on Discord, just hit a message if you need any help with that. Anything.
Oh, she's also starting the open source club initiative. I completely forgot to mention that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be super interesting. It's currently in beta, so applications are closed. I'm not supposed to really talk about it, but something exciting is happening in stealth mode, and Erica is responsible for it. So thank you, Erica. All right, up next, Danny. I'm so excited to have you on today's panel. I got to meet you when I attended a talk that I did at Coding Temple on LinkedIn, and you reached out to me, and I sort of started following you on LinkedIn, and you started sharing your own journey in terms of, I think one of the hardest things about graduating from a boot camp is staying on the path of where you're not being sucked into, watching like just tutorials and then not building. So I was just so happy to see that like you were doing that. And, for someone that has as a diverse background as yourself, it's like you make it really easy to talk. Like it's so easy to talk to you.
Thanks. I try. Yeah.
We said that at the same time.
Wait, oh yeah.
All I was going to say.
Yeah. No. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I didn't want to cut you off either.
Okay. No. Yeah. Yeah. I come from like a maintenance background, and I just learned like how to code back in January in Coding Temple, and then that's where I met Navi, and yeah, I remember it was really easy to connect as well, and you had asked me to come along for like a workshop. It was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun doing that. But yeah, and actually speaking of, Monarch said that some people just got jobs. I started mine yesterday, so I'm like brand new. Yeah. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, no,
Awesome.
but it's just to show that it's like, like, I don't know.
That's awesome. Danny, congratulations. I've seen how much work you've been doing consistently, and it's not easy. And the fact that you've been sharing your struggles on LinkedIn, if anyone, please follow Danny on LinkedIn. He's awesome. His content is super real. And he's always trying to deliver it in a way that is super relatable. And that's what I really gravitated towards him when I reached out to you and I said, hey, can we do a workshop in Minpine? And you were so gracious, and you were like, yeah, anytime. So I'm super excited. When do you start?
I already started. I started yesterday.
Oh, you started yesterday. Can you share with us where it is?
Yeah, it's with Geek Hive. I'm working remotely.
Nice.
So yeah, just to keep it short, it'll definitely pay off. Like everything that you're doing, I guarantee you, like it'll definitely pay off. I had applied back in May, early May, like super early in May, and then they got back to me. I think like the interview process started in like the end of July, no, towards like the middle of July, and then I got it like officially like August 4th. It was like sometime not too long ago, but the point is, yeah, everything happened pretty fast, and like Navi said, like I was kind of going through something towards the end of July, so just like keeping it real, and I mean just try to be like as organic as possible, just be yourself. But like it just goes to show that even just being yourself and Like no matter like what you're going through, you'll still be able to make it. So I'm pretty
I love
excited
that.
about that.
Thank you, Danny. And you know what's interesting? I know we're in introductions and I'm like taking 15 minutes over here. But I just kind of wanted to touch up on this one thing before we move on to Claire is sometimes when we apply for a job, like it just the process, like the employer side just takes so long from like when you sent out that application to when you get a response. And then when you go on board, it can get really frustrating because like you don't know if they're still kind of evaluating all the candidates, like if they've moved on. And sometimes it can feel like a very blind process and it can be frustrating, but you've got to hang in there. So
I forgot that I applied there. I completely forgot about it. Thankfully, they reached out though.
That's awesome. I love that.
But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. All right. Last but not least, Claire, thank you so much for joining this amazing panel. Claire is probably, I guess, someone that I've known the longest on this panel. Had the pleasure of working with her on the Mint Bean team. She was a hackathon attendee and an active member of the Mint Bean community before we had an opportunity and we're like, hey, Claire, are you interested in coming on board for Mint Bean? Got to work alongside with you for almost a year and have a lot of respect for you as a person. You have an extreme amount of integrity as a human being. You're dedicated to your craft. And Postman is super lucky to have you. Any company would be really, and I'm excited to have you on this panel and so that you can share your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And sorry, the lawnmower person decided to pull up right now, so bear with me. But yeah, I'm happy to be on this panel and I always love to come watch devs suffer through a hackathon. Just kidding, because I'll also be suffering with you as a mentor the next couple of days. Yeah, so I'm what I can bring to this panel. I was a boot camp grad. I went from a liberal arts background to tech. And right now I'm kind of straddling a position that's half dev, half DevRel. So if anybody's interested in those areas, I can help out there.
Yeah, that's an interesting path. And I think a lot of folks don't know what DevRel really means and like how to get into it. I think even like when I graduated from my boot camp, I didn't realize how big tech is and how many different niches there are. It's not as simple as back end, front end database, but there's actually a lot more under the hood. Like even, with the front end team is divided into so many niches, and the back end and like, QA or just UX, UI, there's just so much that one can do. And you got to kind of follow that thing that you're really interested with. So yeah, would love to explore that today. Awesome. Well, Monarch, I don't think you need an introduction, but Monarch, for those that are just joining us, is the principal developer and CEO of Mint Bean and also happens to be my husband. I would be very biased in sharing like his strengths as a person or as a developer or as a CEO. But he's on it, like jokes apart. He's amazing. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to introduce you.
You wrote 2 paragraphs for every single person over here except me.
I don't know what to say when it comes to you. Like, you're good at what you do. There.
Well, I'll introduce myself. So I'm a self-taught dev, and I am also, so I started as a self-taught dev. I did a master's degree, well, most of a master's degree in software engineering. And I started a software dev company 5 years ago that's now morphed into Mint Bean from, since the pandemic started, we've been doing all these hackathons. And this is really after almost 10 years of coding and just leading teams and building software. I'm still a hands-on coder. I can't imagine a life without coding at this point. I'm paying it back with Navi. We're both paying what we got from tech back to the community with Mint Bean. Navi is actually a bootcamp grad, and Navi has done a lot of work, especially in Mint Bean, to help developers get jobs. She mentors people in the community all the time. She's often the first person that people reach out
This
to
is
when
about
they.
you, not about me.
Oh
Make
my
this about
gosh!
you.
But you were talking about me. It's only fair that I talk about
I
you.
hardly talked about you. Make this about you. Please stop.
Okay. As you guys can see, this is like cornball and cheesy as
This is what our team had to
so.
go through. Claire, what do you have to say
Yeah.
about this?
I missed it.
We miss you. We really, really miss you. But I want to start the panel. I feel like introductions have been really stretched out here. I want to talk about sort of let's maybe jump right into getting that first job. I'm gonna kind of go this way counterclockwise this time so that we can talk to Claire first. Tell me about that first. I know what this is, but I want to hear it from you. That first sort of roadblock that you hit at your first job here at Mint Bean and what that experience was like.
I'll even back it up a little bit more. So like many of you, I was a boot camp grad, and my boot camp taught Ruby on Rails and was very light on the front end. So looking at like the job prospects coming out of boot camp and, wanting to pay for boot camp, I saw, okay, if anybody wants to get a job, React is the thing you need to know these days. So that's what I dove my first like month and a half after boot camp into teaching myself React. And I see a lot of you in the comments talking about like tutorial hell. To be honest, I never entered tutorial hell. Like I did just enough tutorial to understand what I needed to do, and then was always trying to kill two birds with one stone. So like I used the little skill I knew in React to build myself a portfolio, which helped me learn React and also get a portfolio for, when you're looking for jobs. And this approach helped me land my first freelance job with somebody that was building a project in React. And it actually ended up paying for my entire boot camp. So I might have been a little lucky, but also I think the fact that I really pushed myself through the pain of not just tutorials, but, actually building things that were useful, that really helped. And then like many of you, I was doing Mint Bean hackathons. So after that freelance gig finished, I wanted to like build more real projects. And this is a great place to not be in tutorial hell, because there's going to be nobody telling you exactly how to build your game. You're going to have to think it through. And that's where I got recognized by Monarch and Navi and ended up working at Mint Bean. So that was my path from like boot camp into my first not freelance job in tech. And I finished boot camp in 2019, December, finished the freelance job in like May of that year, the next year. And then I think I started Mint Bean like a month and a half after that. So you can do it.
I love that story. It didn't answer my question though, but we'll come back to that. I actually want to have another follow-up question on, that freelance opportunity that you got. Do you remember how you got in touch with that opportunity?
Yeah, so it was a connection. My TA at the boot camp was offered this huge gig and needed a second pair of hands. And that's one thing I'd recommend is like, it's never too early to be in a coding community. Mint Bean is a great place for that. But, even as many interesting communities you find, like get involved in open source projects, because of all of the job offers I've gotten or jobs I've worked the last couple years, all of them have not been me applying coldly. It's been through some sort of referral. And which has been easy for me. I haven't experienced this 200 job application hell that everybody's talking about. It's all about knowing people and people knowing you and wanting you to be on their team.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the open source initiatives that you're involved with, how did that open up other just more opportunities for you?
Yeah, well, through Mint Bean, I met Redwood.js team. They're building a JavaScript full stack framework. And the people on that team are incredible devs. One of them is the co-founder of GitHub. So me having like no experience and then working with that caliber of people this is the internet, people. It's very flat hierarchy. You can get bump shoulders with interesting people.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, we've been sort of talking about that here at Mint Bean, of like how accessible all of a sudden people have gotten. And, you know, while we are hearing like in Twitter and LinkedIn and other places of like, oh, when are we going to get physical conferences back? And it's like, yeah, everyone misses that in-person contact, but at the same time, it's actually made networking easier because you get to build a story. Like soon as you see someone's profile, like, and if they have an online presence, like you're aware of what kind of person they are, or at least what kind of person they've shared with the world. And you kind of have a story that like you can either relate to or reach out to them and be like, hey, you know, you talk about these points and this is what I have to say, or this is what I have to share. Like there's commonalities that are so much easier than when you meet people in a physical space. And like first you sort of have to do that dance where you just get to know their name. And get past like the niceties of like being inside that same place at the same time. So I think you can get to deeper conversations much, much, much faster. And if you look at, you know, everybody on the panel, we're all located in such different parts of the world. Would have never gotten to work with you, Claire, if it hadn't been for, you know, remote working and like the fact that you're in Portland.
And pandemics.
Yeah, absolutely. Monarch, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask Eric. We're having a really good discussion in chat about tutorial hell, and I know you went through it just a little while ago. You wanna?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, there you go.
So I think like because I'm self-taught, I didn't go to boot camp. In boot camp, there's like this thing that you learn something and then you do some work, build something. There's like a set time, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like a set time in a day that you actually set to practice stuff that you learned before. I think it's like that lack of structure. So you end up just like following like Udemy courses and things like that. And that the trap that you end up falling there is like you end up building big things with those Udemy courses. So you don't want to build to-do lists because you're like, I just coded this e-com website. Why am I going to do a to-do list? But then when you try to code something, you have like a blank page and you can't do anything because you don't know yet, like you don't have structure in your brain how to do those small bits to put them together first. So I'd say if you're stuck in tutorial hell, don't do projects that require more than 1 day. Start with projects that you can sit and finish in 2 hours. If you think a to-do list is too easy for me, I did like social network. I did like do something that you can finish in 2 hours. You finish this one, set one, then you can finish in 5 hours. But like grow it. Don't like try to set and build something out of scratch, like or do something like build just like an application to do authentication, nothing else, just that leads to like a blank dashboard. And that's it. Like now you can use that for every other project that you do. So it's like, and then build something that can display something on the screen, like practice, like crowd operations. So display a list of things and then you post a list of things and edit them. Now you can do like things that you use to build a social network and a bunch of other stuff. So maybe like you can think about a bigger app if you don't want to do just a small thing. I want a big portfolio projects because I don't want to waste time. Break it down and make it 2 small projects that in the end you can put together and try to build on the hours. So I think like that helped. I built just an authentication app, and that was like my first actual like project that I did, and then I used that for an e-com that I built. So I think that will be my advice with regards to that, because I did so many Udemy courses, but then I couldn't put anything together, anything like. So it's like start small and then start adding things to it.
If I could add to that excellent advice, one of the hardest things for making those small projects is sometimes thinking of something to make. And one easy way to get ideas is to just scroll through the many Mint Bean hackathons that all live on the Mint Bean website And if you go far enough back in time, like Mint Bean used to do these 4-hour hackathons. So like the earlier prompts were designed for these like half-day blitzes, and they might be a good place to get inspired for something to make. You might see what's there and you're like, I can make something better than that. And or you actually can look at other people's code if you get stuck on something too. So that's one tip.
Yeah, that's
a good idea.
Yeah, this thing with like knowing what to build, I think builds for me, like it was also like a big deal because in my head I had to build a startup to start my first project. It had to be so innovative and so cool. So it had, so it was like you just need, it's like you're learning to code and showing skills. You're not showing you're an inventor or something like that. But in my mind, like I even talked to Monarch about this like idea of like an environment for people to practice code works together. And I'm like, I haven't even built a to-do list. And I'm like talking about this big app, which is like a startup. But what we could do, Monarch and Abby, we could like pin in like the general channels, like 10 top projects to get you started with, and then have like some ideas for people that, so like they don't go through like old hackathon. Like if they don't go, that's an awesome idea. But like if like they arrive later, they missed it out, and then you can have a link for that. But like do it to the list, do this, just like top 10.
Yeah, there are also like idea generators that you can find online that kind of give you prompts. I've used to use them for design work too, where it'll just like, some of them are full on like app projects, like develop like a flower app for, a small town in Copenhagen, like a very specific, or other ones that are just very generic, like, oh, okay, a shooter game that has, elephants, it's just like a starting off point. But yeah, I mean, it is part of the struggles coming up with like just what you're going to do, because that lays out, that's like your blueprint for what your next few days are going to look like. And if you make that way too ambitious, then you kind of just shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and like just
Yeah.
like one more thing that I like faced with the tutorial how is I see like this is very common. I mean, to be in community when people share their portfolios. I saw all those projects before in the tutorials I've done. So don't use those, like employers seeing the same ones, like people are not even changing the colors. So it's like, I saw a few that are like like 5 projects. They're all like tutorials I've done, and they will see that other people done them. So like, okay, you finish one. Now, what can you change it to make it look like yours? Not just like changing colors, but can you add certain functionality, play a bit with the front end? It's like, it looks bad. Like if I was someone looking for someone to give a job, for me, that looks worse than not having a portfolio at all, because it's like you're trying to pass some work that's not yours as yours. So you don't need to scrap it, but like change it so it's yours.
That's some solid advice, Erica. I've seen that because I'm sort of the top of the funnel, like for both Mint Bean and Zero. So when we get pile of applications for any of our developer roles, like this is something that I've spoken about, where one of my primary jobs when I take those resumes and pass them to the engineering team is, we don't have a big engineering team. So like a lot of the time it's Monarch who's involved in hiring, and his time is very precious. So it's like, I need to make sure that the very few people that I put in front of him are strong candidates. So I need to be looking out for a lot of red flags. I need to be looking inside of their repos and looking for those things that like, hey, is this person just taking tutorial applications and not really doing anything? You said a lot of amazing things about a lot of developers find that like when they want to build something, they almost approach it from I'm an entrepreneur or I'm a startup and I need to come up with a new product idea, which is like crazy. It's even hard for a startup to come up with a product idea that like solves a real pain point. So you don't need to build to solve a real pain point. I mean, you can, and that's great, but that shouldn't be where learning happens. And Danny, I want to come to you because you share a lot of interesting information, and your own philosophy around how you've sort of been building your portfolio has been interesting. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
No, I'm on a cover now. Yeah. No, sorry. Yeah. So I remember last time I had mentioned that with most of my projects, wait, real quick, Erica, you gave a lot of really good advice. So but just to like add on to it, because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to contradict it either. But my approach to it is sort of like, could I sell this? Like, could I give this to a client? And that's not to say that I actually will, but it's just to hold myself to like that, like higher standard for myself. And most of the projects that I've done aren't also like, you know, like from the ground up type of things. So it's not like anything too like entrepreneurial, but like, so I do front end work. So most of it is like web development. And so I think like, could I, like if someone came to me and asked me to build out a website, could I give this to them? Like, is this something that I could easily, or like, let's say sometimes, because you can also like make a template. Could I sell this off as a template, you know? So it's just things like that that I try to keep in mind to just hold myself to a higher standard, because I wouldn't want, you know, anyone like, you know, like a hiring manager or something to go through my GitHub and then see that it's like incomplete or like it's a little glitchy or it's not responsive. So that's the way that I approach it.
Yeah, I remember you sharing that in your workshop, that what you do with your portfolio pieces is really work on the user experience, and make sure you captured that really well before you move on, so that there is a finesse to your portfolio pieces, at least. Maybe not everything that you do, but at least your portfolio pieces, the ones where employers are going to interact with the most.
Right.
One thing that I kind of want to mention here, and pause and reflect on what everyone is sharing, is that if you guys can see, like, everyone is sort of has a very unique philosophy. Claire's journey, like, everyone is here, hasn't been developing more than a year. I think with the exception of Claire, but like, it's everyone's sort of taken their own approach in terms of what works best for them. I think there's a lot of conflicting advice out there, a lot of people telling you you need to do this or you need to do that, but you know how you learn best, right? You know how what sort of frameworks work best for you when it comes to learning. When I do a lot of talks, the one thing that I get asked is, hey, what should I build next? I always say, like, start small, like build a like you said, authentication, and then go back to the learn a bit as well, Julio, because the philosophy of the learn a bit is like, the first challenge you guys did was you broke the landing page into 5 different challenges, and it wasn't about like, hey, we're building something complex, but it's like, we're building, and we're gonna think about clean code, we're gonna think about semantics. Can you share some of the sort of the interesting findings that you found, like from like demo day or from feedback day, that you gathered from talking to all those developers?
Sure, definitely. And before that, I also want to say that, like, breaking it down, like, it's already like a simple project, right? The whole landing page is a relatively simple project, but breaking that down even to even simpler things, it kind of gets you into that mindset, because everything that you do in code boils down to a very simple task, right? So however crazy you make your algorithm, however complex your code is, it's iterating through these simple tasks, right? So like getting your head to, like, something might seem like really daunting. You have this huge project in front of you. Where do I start? Well, you break it down into little tasks. Like, you think that trying to get something done is very complicated, but that very complicated thing can be turned into, like a series of very, very simple tasks. Anyways, so on demo day, people kind of, you learn the most from a demo day, right? You don't learn if you don't attend. If your project isn't good, if you're not finished, if you don't think it's great, if you don't want to show it, still go to the demo day. Even if you don't want to present, even if you don't want to submit, go to the demo day, just be there, experience other people going on stage, talking about their code. You'll start realizing that you're probably closer to each other than you think. And it kind of starts loosening that like kind of hesitation to even like you don't want to fail, right? Like a lot of, for me in particular, like you want to put your best foot forward. You have hesitation for anything that you might think, you know, is not going to go your way. So you might abandon it or not follow through. But by doing that, showing up on that last day, you're slowly breaking away like those layers. You're giving yourself more exposure to that situation that can be considered high stress. But the more you expose yourself to it, then when it comes time to like be in front of somebody where you actually have to present your real code to like, you know, an interviewer or something like that, it'll be a lot easier for you. Because that was one of the huge things for me, is just that it's not even like stage fright, because if it wasn't something important, like I'd get on stage, whatever, be silly, do whatever. But if it's like a job, right? Like you have like your interview, something's important to you, all of a sudden you just built that thing up in your head to be like this beast that you don't want to battle. And so you avoid even dealing with it, right? And then slowly you expose yourself around that beast, then it's just like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. You're more willing to try. It's not going to make it simple for you. It's not going to make it easy. Nothing is. That's part of this whole journey is realizing that you're stronger than you thought you were like the day before, because you're tackling that next task. And that is like a personality trait that is a requirement for a coder.
Yep.
I wanna add on to that, because I've kind of seen you work through that, Julio. And I remember you started working on this on this game after a long time of just not wanting to code, and you started working on this game, and that just totally changed. You all of a sudden you just got like that old passion back for coding, just all of a sudden, and all you did for that whole week, if I remember correctly, was just code in that game, and you didn't apply for jobs or anything. It almost felt like you were kind of refreshing yourself.
Yes. The interesting part about that is like the intention that I had when I first went on like my real coding journey, because before this, like I said, I had exposure with HTML and CSS, but very, very little, was to like, I had this idea in my head of like what the goal was. Like, okay, well, I want to become a coder. I want to have this good paying job. And like, that was the requirement, and everything else was built around that requirement that I just made for myself, because I was like, I'm going to step up, I'm going to get into this spot. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, I didn't really fully understand it. I just, from an outsider's perspective, like, oh, that, I want that, so I will do whatever I need to get there. But as you're going through this journey, you start realizing things about you, like, okay, well, what kind of coding do you like? What kind of coding don't you like? What stresses you out? Like, obviously there's going to be challenges, there's going to be stress, it's not going to be easy, but what, at the end of it all, what did you like doing more than the other one, right? And when I went through the boot camp, oh, what do I, exactly like everybody was saying, like, what do you learn? Like, okay, I want to get a job. What's in the market now? What kind of thing? So I went on a front end boot camp. I did React. And then I didn't know what to do afterwards. And then I was just like, oh, well, what do people do? You make projects, you do stuff. I also fell through tutorial hell. I also, came up with super overly ambitious ideas that I would just never be able to finish. And because of that, I set myself up for failure. When you're that overly ambitious, at your point, you need to know where you stand, right? Always push that limit, but know your bubble of where you can actually like exist in. Because if you overshoot, undershooting is always better, but if you overshoot it, then you feel bad on yourself, because you take that personally. You're like, I set up this task, I made this goal, and I didn't do it. Therefore I must be bad. Therefore, maybe this is not for me. And it's just like this cascading effect of like perception of failure, like through your mind, because of like what you're doing and like how you're setting yourself up. So when that one time when you were like, you know what, you got to start loving what you're doing. Like I see you coding, it's stressing you out. And I was trying to make websites, I was trying to make apps, I was trying to make things that I felt like people wanted to see, but not really what I wanted to do. And I've talked to other developers and they were like, yeah, you know, get a coding job. It's not like the best thing. It's a stressful job, but you make good money. I've even talked to other developers that were like, you know, I like game design too, but that's like for fun. Like I do my regular coding job and then I do game, because gaming doesn't make any money. And then like I've heard that before several times. And then I'm started thinking like, man, I really like gaming, but it doesn't make money. And the whole reason I was in this was for like kind of like a job security for the future kind of thing. But the trade-off is too big. Like once I started making that game again, and then I started getting a little bit more attention for it, and the thing started kind of snowballing, then I started feeling good about it again. Like, yeah, I was still struggling. Yeah, I was still running into code problems. I was getting stuck and felt bad, but I was still enjoying the entire process as a whole. Rant over.
No, that was not a rant.
Not a rant at all.
freaking
What
good,
I
Matt.
got out of not a rant at all. What I got out of that was it reminded me of something. I read this book. It's really popular. A lot of you have read it. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and it's by a guy called Robert Pirsig. He talked about this thing called gumption traps, and the ones who have read Zen, they know what I'm talking about. And gumption traps, it's this. I'm just gonna read. I was trying to find a PDF of the actual chapter. It's deep in. It's in like chapter 20 something. But here's what the gist of it is. Robert Pirsig lays out a number of what he calls gumption traps, circumstances that can make you lose your attempt to build quality stuff, to do something that's worthwhile with your life. To have that gumption basically means this inner drive to really just go and do stuff. I wrote this article a long time ago. I called gumption yeet force, like, you know, thing that makes you go yeet. You know, like that's something that just makes you want to do stuff because it's fun. It is yeet. What is yeet? Okay, not going there. So he says that you can. He divides gumption traps into two categories. One is, he calls them setbacks, and setbacks are things that throw you off of building quality stuff from external circumstances. And these are setbacks. They're just stuff that you can't really control, but there are ways to control them. And then there's another type called hangups, and hangups are traps. They're not circumstances, they're traps that you get into. And they're really interesting because these are like logical fallacies. Could be a gumption trap as a hangup. One really common gumption trap that I see in code is you just want to build something that's perfect, or you want to build something that fits some higher ideal or category. I think it was mentioned a few times already. Julio mentioned it. I think maybe Danny mentioned it, but it's Danny uses that as a goal to strive towards, and that works for Danny. But for Julio, when you have like a really high standard, that like counteracts your gumption, and it works differently for different people. So for what's, you know, how's the idiom go? Like what works for one person wouldn't work for the other person, and you have to know what the traps are for you, that makes you keep that enthusiasm. Like managing enthusiasm is probably the biggest problem, the biggest hurdle. And if you can manage enthusiasm, I'm going to drop the link to this excerpt if people are interested in this. It's somebody just wrote a whole blog article on it. If you want to read the book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, is one of those things that'll teach you to think more clearly. It starts off by saying it's not about Zen, and it's not about art, and it's not about motorcycles, and it's not about maintenance. It's about a lot, and it's a really, really fantastic book. I'd highly recommend it, especially anybody who's getting into software development. It helps you see the difference between rational thinking and emotional thinking. Not that either of them is bad, but how does that deal? It makes you think about coding in a different way, is what I find. So, you know, off topic, out of left field, coding book recommendation, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Y'all should all be reading it.
I don't think it's
really
off topic. I think that there's a lot here that that I know is very relatable, and it kind of goes back to that first question I asked Claire of like, there's so many. The thing is, like, one of the things that I think when I think about software development, it's one of those tools and skills that's really easy to pick up, but very difficult to master. And you're gonna come across many roadblocks, and it's not just something that happens inside of year one. It's something that's gonna follow you for your entire career, and it's a matter of like, how far do you want to go with it, because it's a rabbit hole that's just, it'll keep going. And I've seen you go, like, Monarch, like in the last 10 years, for those of you that don't know, Monarch got fired from his first dev job within the first month of being there. And that's a interesting story that I'll let him share. But in the last 10 years, like we have a lot of friends inside this industry, and a lot of them are great developers, but I've also seen a lot of developers kind of find companies or roles and sort of stagnate on their growth, because it's, like I said, it's one of those things that you can take it as far as you want, or you can kind of like get comfortable and be like, I like it here and this is where I want to be. But I want to come back to my earlier question, Claire, of like, how did that first sort of real wall that you hit, how did you kind of overcome that? How did you overcome like when you started doubting, is software development for me? And I don't know if this is too personal for a panel, because I remember when you were going through that, and me and Monarch were like, she's such an incredible developer. Like, we were both confused of why you felt that way. And you had so much self-doubt, and it was really hard for us to understand it, because you're so good at what you do, but yet, like, you had these forces that were sort of challenging you mentally and making you question your own ability.
Are you talking about Kanban?
Yeah.
Yeah, Monarch and Navi had me build this very difficult feature that seemed really easy, and it was a good challenge.
It was not
like
me,
you
it was
said.
Monarch.
The mental forces that were getting you down, that was me. Sorry.
Don't build a Kanban for your game.
Don't.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I wouldn't say like I hit that obstacle and then I avoided it and now I never feel like that. I think with me and maybe other people, because many of you have changed careers, some of you are just feeling out like what fits for you, what interests you. And of course, software development is attractive because of it's probably the easiest into the highest paying jobs out there. But for me, like even before I was a job seeker, software development interested me because I wanted to be a construction worker. I liked working like with wood. I took welding classes. I thought that was going to be my path. And the cool thing about software is you can build stuff, but you don't have to like lug heavy material. You don't have to buy really expensive equipment, a laptop, obviously, but not, a whole shop. So in terms of like what gave me like meaning and like purpose in life, like building stuff and software was there. It's also very hard. And I am not known to be the most logical person. So every step of the way has been kind of rewiring my brain, and it's been difficult. It's gotten easier, and I'm still not sure like I want to be like a dev as my career. I definitely want to keep building things, and being adjacent to tech for now is where my interest is. But look at my career path. I was an interpreter, a translator. Now I'm doing something totally different. I think I'm in these jobs where I can be in the cracks, and that's what my current role is as well. So
thank you for the honesty.
One other thing I'll say is being in a community is the save all. Like those times when I really felt like quitting, I would talk to some devs, I would see some projects other people were doing. I would find joy in what I really hated doing, like making Kanbans. I would find joy in coding by seeing like what other people are building and talking to other devs. So yeah, if I was not in a coding community like MintBean and like my alumni group, I would have quit tech already for sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
To me, when you say that, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're such a phenomenal developer. That's like insane. Like honestly, that's like the wildest thing that I've heard in 2021. So
And yeah, birds of a feather flock together, but it's also the opposite is also true, where if you hang out with, they say that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. And if the thing about the internet is that if you hang out with a bunch of communities like you did, it ends up, those thoughts kind of start just infecting your brain, and you start becoming smarter all of a sudden, and you start thinking along the right lines. That's one aspect that I value a lot about communities. Another is that they give you that emotional support. I mean, like what I honestly wake up every morning and I talk to people in the community, like all of you. Danny, this is the first time that I'm talking to you, but I think, but it like I talk to all of you folks on a near weekly or daily basis, and it just makes my day that much better.
Literally wakes up
It's
and it's the first thing he does. I'm not even kidding. Like, picks up his phone, first thing, Discord. I'm like, you've got a problem. But he really loves this community a lot. But I want to touch on imposter syndrome, but on a more positive note. And I kind of want to go around the room of like, how do you deal with it? How do you sort of recognize it when you do kind of feel like it's taken a hold of you? I think Claire's already shared her story. So I'm gonna skip you, Claire. Let's go to Danny.
Yeah, so like everyone else has said so far, like definitely having that community, or at least having a friend, like I mentioned her a lot because we work together really well a lot. But like my friend Tati from like the same class as me, we try to do like some series on we try to do a series on LinkedIn on like just web development tools and stuff like that. We're trying to think of like some more ideas, but just like working with somebody who's in that same boat as you sometimes really helps out a lot. And I'm not really like a big community guy, but it does help out a lot, you know? And even now, like at work, sometimes I'm the only one on the team, by the way. I'm like the only one doing the work. But so like it's not like I have anyone to compare myself to, but still it's like, is this right? Like I doubt myself all the time. And when that happens, I just have to remember like, all the work that you've done and all the work that you'll continue to do. When it does lead up to that moment where you do get a job, you deserved it. Like you did everything, well, like not right, but like you did everything. Yeah, like you did everything right. Like you got to that moment. Like that's the goal. If that is your goal, like you got a job, and you should be really proud of that. And just remember that no one else did the work unless you copied and pasted. But no one else did the work. You're the one that like you sat through like all the lectures, all the videos. Like you did that. You read all the documentation. You coded like day in and day out. That's what you did. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's something that's really easy to forget. I was actually talking to my friend yesterday, and he's a coder, and like he's always been a coder since like high school. And I would talk to him about stuff, even though he wouldn't talk about the same languages as me. We could still talk conceptually about code. Like there's still that middle ground. And we were just talking about like a year ago, I couldn't even type without looking at the keyboard. You know what I mean? Like it's such a huge difference now. And it's really easy to, while you're in the middle of all of that, to not realize that, take a step back and be like, whoa, it really hasn't been that long. And like, I'm already here kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's actually another good point too. I remember, so I graduated at like in the beginning of April, and I was already fiending. I was like, I got like maybe a couple of rejections, and I was so like hard on myself. And I was like, wait, I just like graduated. Like it's only been a couple of weeks. And then even in July, it's like it's only been a couple of months. So just keep that in mind. Like try your best to center yourself and just remember. And even if it's been like a good while for you, like, I mean, I'm only 21, so it's gonna sound weird saying this, but like life is long, and like you'll have like a long time to, like you're gonna feel a lot, but just remember, keep yourself centered, and just like remember where you came from. Is what I guess I'm trying to say, But yeah.
Thank you for making me feel old, Danny.
I'm sorry, no, that wasn't my intention.
No, I actually really liked what you said about that, because I think a lot of people in at least like, inside the Mint Bean community, whether it's on the Discord server or on LinkedIn, have this concept. And I felt like I also had it when I graduated GA, which was, and I don't know if it's like the marketing material that happens inside of boot camps, which I think is kind of changing. The industry is relatively new, so they've learned a lot from their past mistakes, but they've done a lot of great work as well. I think there's this common misconception that like after the 12-week period, you're going to get a job immediately. And that's just like not realistic. That's not realistic. It's going to take you anywhere from 3, 6 to 9 months, maybe even 12. But in those months, like you got to keep building, right? You got to keep creating. And whether that's, you mentioned something interesting of like pairing with a friend. Erica actually has the same experience. One of her really good friends, was that first person that like was the accountability factor with her. And then that friend ended up getting a job and she was like, oh, I don't have anybody. And luckily, like she found us at that same time. And then she was able to join this community and get that feeling of accountability and just like, hey, like, this community is here. If I need just, a rubber ducky or just to just vent my frustrations of like dealing with code. But I think that misconception is very real of like, I'm going to get a job within 12 weeks or 3 months or like whatever the term of the bootcamp program is. And the truth is that you're in the same spot as everybody else who graduated with you. You have the same portfolio pieces. There's nothing that says that, oh, like this kind of distinguishes you from someone else inside of your cohort. And that's what you need to start working on as soon as you graduate, right? Like, how do you separate yourself from the flock? By working on your skill.
I know I was supposed to shut up on this question, but to build on what Navi just said, actually, for people that have done boot camps, you do have a differentiator because everybody that goes into that camp comes from very different background. And that is something that even CS grads don't have a lot of times. You might have work experience somewhere else. And that's helped me guide myself with coding. That's how I got involved with like localization projects, for example, because I have this language background and it kind of gave me a little direction. Any of you that have graduated a boot camp like over a year ago, if you've just graduated, you're going to see this. Your cohorts are going to go in many, many different directions. And that's just what it is about tech. That's why it's kind of imposter syndrome. It can't really be a thing because everybody there's no master of the entire tech skill set. Everybody is so specialized. And as bootcamp grads, you definitely have a very unique skill set you're bringing to the table.
I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that. That's actually really funny that you mentioned that. So we actually have a conference that's coming up in October that talks about this. We're super excited to bring in lots of different players, employers, hiring partners, and talking about like exactly how does a bootcamp program strengthen your opportunities. And like you said, I've seen like we've hired 10 bootcamp grads in the last year at Mint Bean, and every single person had such a variation of previous experience that like made them a solid developer, and it brought like a uniqueness to them, which was so thank you, Claire, for the correction. I appreciate that. And like you're absolutely right. I think when you think about bootcamp programs compared to universities and colleges, I think that there's definitely an edge with bootcamp grads. Coming back to our circle, Erica.
So for me, like I had imposter syndrome, but I think like I felt imposter syndrome like with everything else in my life to such a higher level that I didn't feel it so much. And that's not because I know the stuff, because like I'm actually still the beginning of my journey, is because I had that main thing, which is my PhD. And I had coding kind of like a way of like running away from the stress from that. So it wasn't my main thing. Like if this doesn't work, life is over. So this was not like the main thing. I had to get a job and like I had my main thing. So this was a hobby for me. I didn't get into tech because of the salaries, and like I like this. I do it for fun. I would pay to do it, but the fact that someone wants to pay me, it's better. It's something that like I really enjoy and do it for fun, do when I'm stressed. So of course I had like times where like I question like, am I ever really gonna understand this? But then when it's like kind of a challenge, like, you know, when you're solving a puzzle, and it's hard, you don't really feel like I can't do this, puzzles are not for me. It's like you're like, this is interesting. So this is more the mindset, but because like I like this. So I think like if you try to approach it as in, I think like when this is like, if you don't get a job, if you're approaching that way, you freak out and you can't think about it like as the fun of the journey, you know, like this is a challenge, how do I solve it? Break it down. So I think it's like the hurry to get to the finish line. It's like, I need to get here. So okay, let's break it down. It's like, what is this line of code doing? Like, so if you break it down, you can do it. But like when you look like too far ahead, you can't really like make sense of the whole thing and you start to panic. And I think because I didn't have to look that far ahead so much, I took my time to break it down. So I think like even if you have to get ahead like soon, still break it down because otherwise it's counterproductive.
That's some solid advice. Not to. I wanted to actually come to Monarch for imposter syndrome. I feel a lot of people think that you don't go through imposter syndrome because you've been doing this for a decade. But I know that it's not true. So can we talk about that from your perspective of like, do you call it imposter syndrome at the experience level that you are? And like, what does that even look like now that you've been in this industry for as long as you have?
No, I mean, imposter syndrome, the words are important. And for me, like words are very important for me. And I don't like calling things imposter syndrome. I don't like calling emotional things imposter syndrome. Do I get emotionally tried? Yeah, I do. I go through serious bouts of, I can't call it depression, but really low phases, burnout. I go through bouts of not thinking that I can do something, feeling worthless, sure. But by calling it imposter syndrome, I'm adding a label that doesn't apply. And why would I want to call myself an imposter? And then, you know, once you call yourself something, once you label yourself something, it starts going invisible, it starts cloaking, and then it's still there, it's still doing damage, but you forget about it. And now it's like in your subconscious, that word imposter becomes this subconscious thing that's working on you and you don't even know it. It's even worse if you use it casually. If you use imposter syndrome as a label to connect with other people, now you're kind of connecting, now you're kind of using, it becomes like a social drug almost, where you're using the word imposter syndrome to make friends and you know, it's human. You're using the word imposter syndrome to connect with other people who are going through a similar circumstance. They're using the word imposter syndrome. You start using it to say, yeah, I'm feeling that too. And what ends up happening is it just takes on a life of its own, because now it's not just in your head anymore. It's also stuff that other people might be experiencing, and it becomes real. And at that point, that really small word imposter starts taking a heavy toll, not just on your mental state, but also on your career prospects, on your passion for code, on your gumption. And that's why I don't like the word imposter syndrome. I think it's dangerous. And instead of calling it imposter syndrome, I think it's more useful to label it more precisely. If you're feeling depressed, say you're depressed. You know, say you're sad. Say you're having a bad day. But if you are feeling it for a while, maybe get some help. You know, like maybe get some professional help. But by calling it imposter syndrome, I just don't like that word. I think it's something that really needs to be taken apart. Unfortunately, Twitter is where it usually breeds, and most people talk about imposter syndrome on Twitter more than LinkedIn. And Twitter is just not a place where we can deconstruct words and examine them. So yeah, like words matter, and I don't like that word imposter syndrome at all. Do I go through emotional problems? Yeah, like definitely. Like the stuff that we do in Mint is hard. I mean, I had to bring up the entire site this morning, and Vercel was just being difficult, and eventually I fixed it. Was I anxious? Yeah, I didn't eat coffee because I was that anxious. So yeah, like I go through stuff all the time.
That's interesting because Erica just kind of described like how she hasn't identified with, that this is her path, and hence hasn't really dealt with the label of imposter syndrome. But I think it's so easy to use labels. Like you bought it on like you're bringing it from such a different perspective of like, let's throw out the label. But then I think it's easier to start identifying like what you're going through when there's existing labels than doing the hard work of like recognizing the emotions that you're feeling. Because like we don't do self checks. I think like just with the way that we all live and like just living in the digital world, like we don't really do a lot of like, hey, how are you doing to yourself.
Yeah, somebody just dropped in mental health. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Oh no, yeah, no, I just wanted to say like real quick. I think even to like the points that you guys brought up, it's really easy, which I never realized before, but it's really easy to like sweep things like anxiety and like depression and like other issues underneath that rug of like imposter syndrome. Like it's a lot easier to call it that way than just admitting, that maybe I am feeling like anxious, so I do have like an anxiety problem, or I'm feeling depressed, so like maybe I do have depression, just to name like, a few. But yeah, no, like that's like a really good point. And that, maybe it's like in the long term, it's better if we just like call it out for what it is so that we can get the appropriate amount of help. No, the correct help. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what both of you said, sorry to jump in again, I just can't shut up. But I feel like actually imposter syndrome is a very useful word because it points out like people have this feeling that they're afraid of being found out, that they're masquerading as something. And the having that word, yes, helps you build community around it, but also points out the fact like, what am I feeling like I'm being an imposter of? What is the image that I feel like I'm masquerading as? And you can realize, oh, I'm a junior developer. My image is like a senior developer, and I feel like I'm an imposter of that, but like I'm not a senior developer. So like oftentimes if you check what standard you're actually holding yourself up to, and if you can adjust that and get a reality check and say like, okay, like I'm right where I need to be, and I'm doing this and this better in some cases, I find it useful.
Yeah, I think what Marek was getting at was that it's like in its core, it's something else. Like, yeah, we describe it as the imposter syndrome to explain what you're actually going through. But if it was something else, you would still have that feeling. It would just manifest in like a different form. And it wouldn't be related to your skill level. It would just be, you would feel like you yourself doesn't amount to whatever you perceive should be amounted to, what you think other people see you should be amounted to, whatever it is. There's like a misconnection between who you feel, what you feel like, and be, you know what I mean? So like, I totally get it. Because personally for me, I have felt imposter syndrome, but I've also had depression. I've also had anxiety. And like, I could notice that these are very well connected, where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm totally perfect, except for this one thing. Like, no, there's like, we all have our issues in our own little ways, and none of us deal with everything the best way possible. But yeah, I mean, as far as the word in and of itself, I understand having that label to kind of identify it. But I also understand how it is just the manifestation of something that's deeper, that's within all of us, right? Because inner like self perspective and like how you feel about yourself, whether you're happy to get up in the morning. All these things affect you on a daily basis. It's going to affect your code. It's going to affect how you tackle your tasks and everything.
Yeah, and exactly like you say, it's never isolated. It's usually, I find a lot of people that have tendencies with perfectionism tend to fall into the imposter syndrome tendency very easily. So it's about shifting your
and that's when I felt it the most, where I felt like like I was very stubborn at the beginning of my coding journey. Whenever I had a project that I wanted to do, I was just like, okay, I'm going to set this amount of time to come up with the project, and this is the project. If I don't make this, I have failed. and you know, that directly affects it. And then I've learned to not that I was perfect, but I've learned to not even try to be a perfectionist anymore. It's like, oh, well, I guess we're cutting another feature. Let's get this thing out, you know?
That's a really good point, Claire, on perfectionism. Like, you know, what this is so true. I've seen it with myself, and I've had to deal with that like, and also I think it's also because we compare ourselves with other people. We compare ourselves with those that we graduated with. We compare ourselves with, you know, like our cohort, or just our peers, and it's like, oh, that person got a job, like, where am I? I still have to, like, you know, I'm still learning HTML, or, you know, that person was learning HTML when I had already picked up React. How did that person get a job before me? That doesn't make any sense. And I think, like, that's when it's not just like, I completely agree that perfectionism is one of those tendencies that attracts self-doubt. But I also think that it's like when you start comparing your own journey with others, because in this field, it's like, it's so personal. Like, it's just, you know, the way that you absorb information and the way that you learn and the things that you enjoy doing, right, is just so personal. Like, every single person on this panel has had their very unique experience of, like, what are some of the things, even like with portfolio building, right? So it's like when we start looking at other people, and that's when I think can really bring you down as an individual, where you want to quit and you're like, maybe this isn't for me.
I feel like the times in my life where I felt like imposter syndrome is that I achieved things out of luck rather than like I belong in this space that I am right now. So it's a very broad feeling, because some people feel that when they hit something in the road, so it's hard to move to that next step. So it's like there's a lot of like definitions. It's like Claire said, it's like where you want to get. For me, it was where I got, but how I got here. Like it's just because out of luck, I happened to this one time do things really well and I got attention. But then, like, I think you need to learn to give yourself credit, because then if you're doing that and those many things that you're getting attention for, you need to realize that there's a pattern here, and you need to start like, oh, I got this job. There must be something here. So I need to start like recognizing that and giving me credit.
Yeah, I think also understanding where other people are at, you know, like Claire was saying, whether there's no comparison, right? So there's no this master coder that knows everything that you're comparing yourself to know whether or not you're an imposter. So it's like, you know, it's kind of like a fake it till you make it kind of thing at the same time, you know. It's like the other side of that coin.
And then just ask yourself, like, why it matters that much to you too. Like, my biggest, I was very much a perfectionist and imposter syndrome sufferer, getting better. But like the biggest thing to get me over it is morbidly, I think about death very much. And then go to like an observatory, go look at the stars, and like just realize how small things are, and like put your issues in perspective, because it is a totally mentally constructed obstacle, this imposter syndrome. And if you can find any technique to like just plow through it, use it.
Yeah. Well, and the more you talk to people too, for me, when people that were superior to me in coding terms, you would always think like, oh, they know so much, they know all this stuff. that when you like talk to them and realize what they're actually familiar with, it's not as much as you thought it was. So then it's kind of like, you know, you start becoming an adult, like, oh no, I still feel like a kid. What is an adult? And then you talk to other adults, like, no one knows what an adult is. You're just that age. And like people just perceive you to be an adult. So it, you know, there's that illusion there too.
Yeah,
There's
and I
this,
also like to go back to what Claire said. It was wait, sorry, no, go ahead.
I was going to take it completely in a different direction. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. I just wanted to say real quick. That's so true because funny enough, I started doing better on my interviews when I was going through like that thing that I was going through. Because it was just sort of like I was just so like I don't know if I'm saying this right, but like I just got over myself. I was like not really taking myself that serious. I was like, oh, fine.
That's
Like, you
the
know,
word.
it was almost as if like, yeah, right. All right, good. I'm using that right. But it was almost as if they were taking time away from me, and it was like putting myself in a position of like importance, you know. But at the same time, it was also like, you know, like I was going through this thing, and I really honestly didn't care about the interview, you know. Like I was just thinking about that, but somehow that made me perform better. And I don't know why, but it's just, you know, but don't get to that point. Like Claire said, like go look at the stars or something. Think about that, not too much, but like if you have to, like whatever. But yeah, definitely like just sort of get over yourself a little bit.
Go look at stars or whatever. Sorry, I want to use that quote somewhere.
There's there's this phrase, rose tinted glasses, and the lens you put on to view the world through ends up just changing your entire experience of life. And this is pretty common. Sometimes you just have to let go of those lenses. Like one good way that I've learned is just look at things and try and find the implicit positive, negative inside, like the yin yang inside it. So if you think about anything, let's talk about imposter syndrome, or actually, let's talk about, you know, I'm not good enough, or how good am I? Am I good enough to be a junior? Am I good enough to be a senior? Am I good enough to code at all? The implicit lens over there is that the implicit assumption there, or the implicit statement there, is that there is such a thing as a good or bad developer. And it might actually sound really silly. I mean, it's very self-evident, and some developers are better than others. But then you kind of go a little deeper and you realize that it's all just arbitrary value judgments, and we only value it because it's practically useful. So you're actually, when you're asking yourself, am I good enough to be a developer, you're implicitly asking yourself, am I useful as a person? And the answer to that at the end of the day is yes. Like every single person is useful. Every single person has a place in society. It has a place in the world. Even if they're all alone, they have a place in their own life. And the question itself is meaningless, because then you have to ask yourself, well, useful for what, and useful to whom? It's just language games. Like Derrida is actually a really good, interesting philosopher I discovered recently, and he talks about this stuff. We just wrap ourselves up in language games, and we end up processing language. It's like a computer in your head. Like you have a computer in your head, and it's running amok with code that you haven't written, and the code is writing more code, and it's processing that too. It's like an eval loop, if people know what eval is in JavaScript. It's just like eval upon eval upon eval upon eval in your head. You don't know what's being processed. You don't know who put it there. And sometimes you just have to stop and just look at the stars and forget about all that stuff that's going through your head. It's all irrelevant, and you're not smart enough to actually pass judgment on yourself. Like, you don't know how good you are. You could be terrible. You could be brilliant. Who knows? Who cares? Like, just be there. You know, who cares? Like, just drink your coffee, relax. Don't care about the code. Like, if the code happens to pull you towards it, go for it. If it doesn't, forget about it. But you got to give yourself the downtime. Just don't take it so seriously. It's all a game. You're all going to die at the end of the day, 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now, 10, 5, 7, 2 years from now. Fuck it. Who cares? Don't give a fuck.
Solid words of wisdom.
Yeah,
Monarch.
words of wisdom. There you go.
Unconventional advice from Monarch Wadia.
What was it? Was it die young, leave a sexy corpse?
Yeah.
No, I feel like a lot of the conversations that we're having in today's panel are very philosophical, and you must be wondering, I thought we were talking about breaking into tech, but one of the things that I think the biggest challenges for developers is getting outside of, someone just mentioned growth mind, is getting outside of your own head. You are your biggest obstacle. And that's really why we created MintBean and why we do these hiring hackathons. We see the numbers in terms of, and I talk about this everywhere. We see the numbers with number of people who say, hey, I want to do the hackathon, to the number of people that show up, to the number of people that actually submit. There's like a ratio, a drop that happens at each stage. So it's like, and for the people that end up submitting, they have a different mindset. Their projects aren't perfect. It's not something that you would be like, oh wow, this is like incredible. But at the same time, they did it. Like it takes a lot of grit. To finish a hackathon. And that's what one of the things that employers really gravitate towards, is that you show up for yourself. And that's kind of like one of the philosophies that we really like honing on and talking more about.
And we are at the top of the hour, and this is a very good note to leave it off on.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining the panel. Really, really enjoyed everyone's diverse opinion and thoughts. Like I mentioned, everybody here on the panel, minus Monarch, is not too far from where you guys are. And you guys can see that they're all different developers, and their frameworks of how they learn and how they grow are different. And they've all managed to break into tech. So congratulations to each and every one of you. I'm super proud of, I know like all four of you really well. And I'm proud of everything that you've achieved, and I'm grateful to know you and see your growth as you grow inside of tech or outside of tech, if you choose.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for helping me and having MintBean around.
Yeah, thank you for
Good luck.
everything. Couldn't be here without you guys.
That's really graceful. Thank you so much for saying that. Okay, all right. Now that we're done the panel, are we going to go back to the hackathon? There are a number of things. I'm going to take you guys off of thank you, but you guys are done.
Bye-bye.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Goodbye. As I chop you guys off.
Erica's hiding.
She's like, no.
No. You're not gonna do it to me, are you? No, you're not.
No. I might do it to myself, actually. So there's going to be a number of events that I'm going to put up on the Meets page, including our first open office hours starts today with Erica, Julio, and Claire. And we've purposely put a whole team for the first office hours so that you guys get a lot of dedicated dev time, followed by Wednesday. Did I talk about the schedule? I don't know if I did. So let me just touch up on that. I'm going to be creating those cards on the Meets page. But so today, Tuesday at 7 p.m., tomorrow at 7 p.m., Thursday at 4 p.m., Friday at 4 p.m., Sunday at 2 p.m. Monday, we have 2 open office hours from first one starts at 2 and the second one starts at 7. And then there's no office hours on Tuesday or Saturday, which is next Tuesday. I think Monarch is also going to be coding along on this particular hackathon. So I'm going to be putting that up as well. Do you want to talk about that? Because I feel like we didn't talk about that at all.
Yeah, totally. So I actually kind of selfishly crafted this hackathon so I'd have an excuse to build a game all week, and I can actually allot work hours to that. So I'll be coding along every single day and building a game. Maybe I'll build like a different game every day. Maybe I'll just try out new libraries, but it's going to be a platform for me to explore ideas in code and outside code. And I'll be streaming that on, I think, Twitch and YouTube. More on that as the week goes on. You'll see it on the Mint platform. I'll just be building stuff and taking requests, and maybe you guys can tell me what to build next, and I can just do that. I'll be sharing insights from software architecture with you, from the higher levels of software engineering with you. I'll be talking about software development history. I'll be talking about architectural patterns, design patterns, jobs, careers. So it's going to be a pretty good way for me to just share my knowledge while slacking off and not doing any work and just building video games. So that's going to happen throughout the whole week. That's the dream. That's the dream.
I have a working title for
it.
it, which is the culture of code.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. It's like I had culture of code. I'm a senior developer, so I also had senior moment, which I don't think is a very good title. But yeah, like if anybody has an idea for the title, working title is the culture of code. And it's totally optional, not required at all. It'll be on the Mint platform, and I'll be streaming. I'm looking forward to this, actually. I'm totally underselling it. I actually want a smaller crowd. So if you're hearing this, it's going to be a lot of fun. I just don't know what the format is going to be. So you'll be seeing me kind of evolve the format as we go. Cool. That's pretty much it, Navi. I don't really have any more announcements. One big piece of advice, if you're a junior developer, try and team up with somebody and build something simple. Like if you're very new, I mean, we're all junior developers, but if you're very new, team up with somebody and build something in a team. If you're confident, try and build it alone. And the reason I'm saying that is that even if two really strong people get together and start working on a project, the communication overhead ends up actually taking up a significant amount of time. So you end up not being as productive. I noticed that the solo projects in the last hackathon were actually way better than the group projects in general. That was an interesting outcome that I did not expect. And there's reasons for that. There's this book, gosh, not 4 Hour Work Week. That's Tim Ferriss. There's another one that talks about hours of work. There's a really famous story over there. He says, all right, a software project is like delivering a software project is like delivering a baby. It takes one woman 9 months to deliver a baby. Adding 8 more women in the group is not going to deliver that baby in 1 month. It's just not. And that's kind of how software development works. So adding more people to a project just doesn't make it go faster. Sometimes it makes it go slower. Stuff like that. I'm going to talk about stuff like that in streams. So this is, I don't know how to end stuff. And I'm like on spotlight. Navi put me literally on the spotlight. Navi, take me off the spotlight.
I'm coming back.
Okay.
So before we end this call, I wanted to maybe open the floor up for Q&A again. So for those of you that made it all the way through, I really do think we owe you guys another Q&A session for maybe another 10 minutes. If there were questions that either came up in the panel or just let's go back to the hackathon. And I am going to open up mic as well. So you should be able to unmute yourself and just come on down, like the price is right, and open your mic. I say that so terrible. I try to be funny all the time. I don't know how good I am or effective. It comes from growing up in a very, very big Punjabi household. you had to learn how to like be funny, or you just get beaten.
You would just come in with the punchline at the end.
Navi.
I'm gonna remove us from Spotlight so that people can just
That's a good idea.
talk. Yeah.
Could I be crazy and ask a question?
No, never.
Is this the time?
Is that, yeah, absolutely, sir. Is that a Doctor Who background?
That it is. Well spotted. Are we emphasizing a no matter what technology you use, a 2D graphical game over something else? Is there a reason, if you were contemplating different things, embrace graphics? Is that kind of our prompt?
If it's 2D, as long as it doesn't have like 3D graphics, pretty much anything is fair game. I try and stick to the letter of the guide of the challenge. So what's on your mind? What do you want to build?
I mean, I have some things that I have been thinking of gamifying that were more, I don't know, database intensive, but have a visual aspect. But should this week be, hey, embrace something new you've never worked in, you know, with Canvas or WebGL, and you've thought about it, so this is your time. Like, is that, just trying to wrap my head around what's a good use of Hackathon.
Different people are here for different reasons. Some people are here to learn. Some people are here because they want to socialize. Others want to test themselves. Yet others want the job. I think most people here want the job. If you can use a hackathon in a variety of different ways. And if you want to use this opportunity to be in the middle of a bunch of people who are doing the same thing as you, albeit in different ways, do it, man. Like it's a bunch of fun to try something new out while other people are coding on similar stuff, and you can bounce ideas and meet other people. Do it. But if you want the job, and if that's what you're here for, then I would suggest not doing something extremely crazy. Do something that'll get you excited, because that'll come out in the project, and you know the hiring manager will sense that. But I wouldn't do something so experimental that I don't know where to start. Like that's a high risk. If your only goal is to get a job, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Somebody wants to build a text adventure, and I'm totally okay with that. Other people want to build card games, and I'm totally okay with that. Some people want to use Python, and I'm starting to warm up to the idea of just using a Python WebGL integration. I'm warming up to it. I don't know how I feel about it yet. But I think if it can be deployed to the web, and it's not like Unity is just cheating, like at that point you're just way ahead of the competition, as long as it's not something like that.
What are your hesitations with using Python?
My hesitations mainly lie with actually using Unity and Unreal, because when you use Unity and Unreal, the competition, it's like using steroids. It's not really web development. It is a web development community. It's for junior web developers, and the hackathon is for web developers. Using Unreal and Unity becomes just like steroids at that point, where yeah, if you're using Unity, you're going to have a way better game than anybody over here. It's not going to be a fair test of skill. Most people are here trying to show off their web dev skills. You come in like a hero and you build like a massive complex game in a week. I'm trying to avoid that. So let's keep things fair. That's what I'm trying to do.
Also, I think it's more of a show too, no, of like what your skill is, because with Unity, there's a lot of pre-built stuff that you just like snap into place in like the asset store. There's a lot of free things, and I mean, yeah, totally. You can literally buy a whole game and just like modular put it in your freaking project, and you're good to go.
Pretty much, exactly, man, exactly. And I think maybe we can do a hackathon like that one day. You know, like a Unity hackathon. That'd be fun if everybody's using Unity, but not for this one, because yeah.
There'd be a lot to go through, because how would you verify any of that?
Well, I'm asking for the source code. So I'll be looking at the source code, and I'll like you can kind of tell, okay, the source code isn't really for this game. You can kind of tell. Phil Brown asked, are there any JS frameworks off limits? Not to my knowledge, Phil, but if there's something that you want to run by me, you can run by me, and I'm gonna start making a list of off limit frameworks. Phaser is totally fine. Like Phaser is totally cool because Phaser is a design choice. Like if you use Phaser, you're giving up a lot too. So Phaser is totally cool.
Yeah, Phaser is cool. Good luck on the documentation, but it is really it's a cool framework. But there's a lot of some assembly required for those docs.
Yeah. If anybody's using Phaser, I always recommend go through the examples. Like it's documentation by example, really. So
when you search for something, make sure it's Phaser 3 and not Phaser 2, because that will ruin your day. The code's almost identical except for some very important things.
Shout out to Julio.
I've done that.
For all the tips. What to avoid. If you
Julio, are you a code mentor?
Yeah, I guess so. Like in like 4 hours, I'll be on.
Oh, so if anybody has any questions about video games in JavaScript, Julio's your guy.
Yeah, I'm particularly JavaScript and Phaser question guy, especially with the new project. I've been picking up a lot more stuff too. And it's got a lot more capabilities. Like I'm just figuring out now how you can link up a Phaser game to interact with like a React front end. So you're rendering everything in the Phaser game, but it's updating your UI on the React overlay, which is actually pretty cool.
Are you doing like, are you using RxJS or MobX or just React State? Like what do you, how are you connecting?
Well, I haven't built it out completely yet, but I was just testing as a proof of concept, and it was just a basic React project, like just importing it in HTML, and like it's all just right there. You know what I mean? There's no extra. I don't really normally like to add these extra frameworks and dependencies and all this stuff. It just adds like an extra layer of like complexity that I'd rather not go to if I can avoid it.
Yeah, that's fair, man. That's fair. That sounds like a neat project. So I guess you're probably going to embed Phaser inside a React front end, and then the game goes on, and depending on the game, stuff updates in React.
Yeah. Right now I have it set up all through Phaser just because it's like I've been on the project for like a month. From where I brought it to from where it was is like a huge difference. But it's all done in Phaser right now. We've got Sages. It's like we're trying to do like a metaverse kind of thing, like a crypto metaverse, all in like Phaser pixel art world. So there's challenges, but it's fun. It's a fun little project.
Not getting many questions. I think we're good. There's questions about recommendations for a framework, which I think we should take to Discord. Jesse, yes, everything you need to start is on A, the hiring guide, and 2, the resources section of the event on the platform. And everything else is pretty straightforward. I think we can wrap up. And questions about teams. You can be in a team of 1, 2, or 3. So you can have 2 friends, 1 friend, or just be your own friend. And that's how it works. And what's an easy one to learn quickly? Phil, honestly, the easiest one to learn quickly, they're all easy. Kind of. Steph asked how our team's rated.
And just closed it. Someone.
I'm sorry.
Question. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, yeah.
I was trying to find a place where I can talk because I'm at work.
No problem.
Yeah, so my question is, I've been really struggling learning coding because I really want to learn the technology. But so I started last year in January. That was my first time learning about coding and what I can do with coding. And so I started teaching myself Python, HTML, CSS, but I can't go beyond that. So I work full time, like 50 hours a week. And I also attended a boot camp. And after 3-4 months, I actually quit it because it was so hard. And so maybe it's more like for a time management for me. but I'm really like struggling when I see people who actually made it in less than a year. And I just would love to know how did they make it when they are working full time.
Yeah, most of those people either didn't have responsibilities outside of work. I was one of those people, or they quit their jobs and they didn't have anything to do except code. And that's generally how it works. If you have like, if you have stuff outside of work that's taking up your time, it's going to be hard. Like people I mentor, I recommend them, and I mentor people once in a while for free, but um, I recommend to them, hey, like just if you can, try and get 8 hours a day of coding in. And if that's not possible, do at least 4. But those 4 hours should be in one uninterrupted chunk. And you're going to have to really specialize in what you're learning. Do you want to maybe, and I guess we can make this the last question. I know it's important for you, so I'm happy to talk about this for a little bit, and then we can wrap up the call after after this conversation. And I noticed that I noticed you spoke about it before too in chat, and you're working 50 plus hours, and it's hard work. Is there any way that you can get, let's say, 20 or 30 hours of coding in a week?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Mm-hmm. Is there any way that you can get 20 to 30 hours of coding in a week done in a consistent basis? Is that possible for you right now?
Yeah, that is possible, yeah. But with the bootcamp, I found they require more than that. Like maybe because, I'm starting, so I spend way more. When they say like 20 hours, I think I need like 60 hours.
Why do you feel like that?
Just maybe because I'm processing the information slower, or I really didn't know why I'm like spending way more time than what they recommended.
How are you learning? Are you learning by reading?
I actually write down everything down in my notes. So I'm writing things down.
Gotcha. And after you write it down, what do you do with it?
Most of the time, I won't look at them again. That's just for the time when I'm studying. I will write them down, and then I won't quit. Like the next day will be a new concept, and the day after will be a new concept. So every day is a new concept. So I don't get time to review my notes, to review what I have learned.
And how many hours do you code? Like, let's say you study for 1 hour, you take notes for 1 hour. How many hours will you code after that?
So most of the, say for example, this morning I was learning Python, and I spent 2 hours solving while loops, questions, and object-oriented programming, like how to make classes. So it took me more than to solve 2 questions. They're very basic, easy question. I spent 2 to 3 hours in the morning.
Yeah, that's normal in the beginning. And when you're doing that, how many hours a day do you do that? And how often in a week do you do that?
I try to do it literally I try to study every day. Whenever I have time, between my work or when after I come back or in the morning.
That's interesting. When you're studying, what is it that, I'm trying to get a read on exactly what's happening and why you're forgetting. And I feel like I feel like there's something in the pattern of how you're doing this. In the beginning, what I used to do was I would learn a concept and I would do those while loop exercises. And then I would go and actually write the while loop. I would use that concept in a project, a small project. Maybe it would just be a function that's adding 2 numbers together. That's my project. The whole function, that's my project. Are you doing that? Are you building projects, even small, tiny ones, just from your imagination?
Not really. No, I'm not good because I don't know what ideas I can do with the basic programming concept.
Gotcha. I think that's the problem. If I'm reading this right, let's say you have a while loop. Using a while loop, you can print lines and I don't know, annoy your husband. You can say, let's say your husband's name is John. I don't know what your husband's name is. You can have a while loop that just infinitely prints John is stupid, John is stupid, John is stupid, and just annoy him with it. Just something really tiny like that. That's a project. And at your stage, that's something that you need to do where you can't just take notes. In fact, I would say don't take notes. Like forget about the notes. Instead of the notes, understand the concept, do the exercises, just that's it. Don't take notes at all. Forget about the notes. It's not going to do you any good. And then go and apply. Programming is like maths. Like all the notes that you take, it's good reference material, but at the end of the day, the way you learn is you code, like you apply, and that becomes second nature. Like you memorize by just doing it, and you code and you code and you code and you just try new stuff. One day you're doing a while loop, the next day you're doing a while loop, and then you're doing like a nested while loop, like you're doing two while loops one inside the other. Then you're doing a function, and then you're putting those while loops inside there. But then every time you learn a new concept, you don't do that concept in a silo. You combine it with what you already know. So you start mixing everything together. It's like cooking, like you buy a new ingredient, you don't forget about it when you buy a second ingredient. You combine all the ingredients you have in your fridge, and then you start making new stuff. I think that's what you're maybe missing. It feels like you're not building that graph of knowledge that you need to become a developer. I don't know. What do you think? Like, am I on the mark, or do you think that this is accurate for your situation?
Yeah, I mean, I totally like know that I'm missing a big part of learning because I'm not doing a project. So I will maybe start from now on, start building small projects.
Yeah, because I think that's a very good idea. And
I'm coming from biochemistry background, so I don't know anything about computer science.
What background? Sorry.
Biochemistry. Biochem. Molecular biology.
Oh, biochemistry.
Yeah.
Oh, biochemistry. Okay. I came from finance, and that's how I came in. So like it's coding is it's like writing and reading. It's hard to do, or riding a bike even. It's hard to do the first time. It's normal. It's easy, and it's something that anybody can learn. Like I don't buy for a minute that you can do biochemistry. And I saw you wearing a lab coat. I think you might have been working in a lab. I don't know, but so you can do science, but you can't code. That's not feasible. That's not no way. Like that's not possible. Some of the same skills that you're using in the lab, like thinking abstractly, thinking like finding patterns, you use those same skills in code. Code is very close to science, and it's not the same, but it's very close. And I have no doubt that if you can work in a scientific environment, you can work in a code environment. It's your learning technique that sounds academic. It sounds like it's geared towards research. It sounds like you're researching the code, not using it to build things. And I think it's your approach to learning that's been failing you, not your effort, but just the way you're learning is research-based, not application-based, is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem. Best of luck. I hope you make it.
Stephanie just shared learning how to learn. I think that's so true when it comes to just, especially the early days. Everybody, like even with the panel, I'll go back to that, is everyone learns differently, and you just gotta tap inside of, your brain and ask yourself, like, how do you absorb information? How do you absorb new things? And like go back to those early days of like elementary school and middle school and high school and university or college, and like how did you absorb information? That's
you
awesome.
gotta wrap it up so I can
I know. That's it for me. That's it for me, guys. Good luck. And we're gonna be doing a recap email that's going to have all this information, where there's a couple of events that I got to put up on the meets page. but I need to have lunch first. So I'm excited for Hack Week to kick off. I'm excited for the first open office hour. It's going to be a fun week. I'm excited for you to hack along, Monarch. You haven't done a hack along for a very, very long time. So
yeah, maybe I'll do Bootcamp Tycoon. I don't know. We'll see.
Bootcamp Tycoon. What the hell is that?
Oh, I started writing this video game where you're a bootcamp student and then you code and you try and get a job, and who knows how far it'll go. So
when did you start writing? I want to wrap this call, but like when do you find the time? Like honestly, like I really do need to check if you're a robot. I should look into that. But guys, thank you so much for joining this call. Really, really appreciate it. Let's go get some lunch and get to know our teams.